Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kriston H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
The rundown.
What up, guys? We're live here. It is Thursday, November 14th. We're live here on the Rundown, rundownlive.com. Mike Pachesney, Kriston Harris.
Hey, what was that bringing us in?
That was Daft Punk
I know.
with
I know.
Pharrell and a little Get Lucky there.
Well,
We're
Daft
not
Punk's good
DJs.
music. No,
Yeah,
no,
it was
by no means.
It was a jam. It was the jam. You know, we had to
Daft
switch it
Punk's
up. We've been
awesome.
switching
That
it
was
up
good.
this week. But anyway, we are going to be joined with a guest tonight. Bruce Fenton is going to be on. You want to tell us a little bit about him, Kriston?
Sure. Bruce Fenton is a specialist in Mayan history and culture, as well as I kind of contacted him about my interest in giants, human giant skeletons. I kind of done a lot of research on giants and their history and American history, as well as newspaper articles about actual dig sites throughout America. Like thousands of them in credible newspapers with credible scientists, with credible organizations that'll lead to either, Berkeley or like to Smithsonian Institute or some of these weird colleges, and then they disappear, and then they tell you that humans were never taller than 8 foot, 8. And here we got human skeletons like the one in Texas. That one article I wrote about Jay McKinney there, he found an 18-foot tall human skeleton with a skull 6 times the size of a normal human, and they estimated it weigh about 3,000 pounds. You know what a 3,000 pound person would eat? A lot of food, man.
Right. Well,
but,
see, there's a lot of things that with ancient history that are just,
riddled
maybe
with giants.
hidden. Well, they're hidden is what I'm getting at. There's things that we haven't necessarily either learned yet because they're still underground, literally,
or or people have hidden them. And
right.
We should really get into that. But before we do, we should plug our website here. If you guys haven't had a chance yet, head on down to therundownlive.com and check out our sponsors. Private internet access. They'll give you the ultimate privacy in the internet. The best ones out there. Basically, they'll allow you to surf the internet anonymously, download, and basically check your email, bank accounts, and you don't have to worry about anyone basically seeing or tracking what you're doing. It's probably the best way. We can't guarantee 100% protection, but it's the closest thing out there. You're not going to make it easy on anyone. It makes it very difficult on them. I guess from what I was reading, it makes them have to go leaps and bounds to be able to get the information. But for $39.95 covers 5 computers, or you can go monthly, and a little bit of that purchase helps what we do here. And do support our sponsors because it helps us keep doing the show.
That's $39.95 for a year too.
For a year, for 5 computers.
Right, and you can pay in Bitcoin, which is a huge plus.
And do monthly. Another one is Blocket Pocket. It's a great item we offer off of our website. Make sure you click on their banner. Blocket Pocket allows you to put your cell phone in a little pocket, and it pulls you completely off the grid. That means no tracking app for an iPhone and or Android is going to locate you. No crazy ex-girlfriends, no crazy ex-boyfriends, no crazy anybody. You can be alone in solitude if you want to hunt or just be away. Or let's say you want to make it improbable for the NSA to track you. You like your privacy, because let's not forget, privacy is freedom. And as well as that, if we don't have privacy, we lose all our other rights, all our other amendments. So we got to protect privacy. It's the most important thing out there, as well as the Second Amendment. So support our sponsors. $37.50 gets you a cool Blocket Pocket. They also offer mats that prevent burning on your legs. I guess that's an issue now. The kids are getting all tired up on the knees, right?
I don't know if it's on their knees, but it's on their legs. But I did want to mention too that Bitcoin is also accepted by Blocket Pocket as well. So both our sponsors, both our current sponsors, both accept Bitcoin. So if you guys want to help us out, help out the sponsors,
and
get yourself some cool stuff that helps your privacy.
Yeah, Mike Maloney had some really awesome things to say about Bitcoin, didn't he? We didn't expect that. We didn't think he'd be a fan, to be honest. But he ended up saying, yeah, I would absolutely trade in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because last I heard he was on the fence about that, and he kind of...
We kind of warned him that we were going to ask him about it. Maybe he investigated it more, and he decided that was the way to go. And it was a good thing we did bring it up, because he had some valuable insight about how it's freedom.
I mean, and when you see your investment triple in value, you realize that this is the same roller coaster that was the stock market before it was fully rigged. You know what I mean? I mean, Bitcoin could be fully rigged. We really don't know.
Well, on one day it could all.
It is a roller coaster, right? And it just happened the other day. So I mean, a Chinese, or I believe it was a Chinese Bitcoin outlet with like $4 million in Bitcoin disappeared. But before we get too far into all that, we also have apps too, Kristan.
Yeah, make sure you guys, if you guys have a cell phone out there, that you guys grab that cell phone with both hands and you type into the Google Play Store the Rundown Live, and you download that app to your cell phone, and it will hit
the most aggressive way possible.
Yes, it'll hit that phone so hard you won't know I hit it. And then you're going to be able to download cool podcast apps and songs, not songs, but not episodes songs. Of Mike's.
Right,
well, every once in a while, Mike will sing to you, you know.
Yes, I do sing occasionally, but not right now. I'm not going to.
He does opera like that one guy in that talent show. He just went up there and everyone started crying. You remember that?
Yes. But we know that's on iTunes, Droid, and Amazon. You
and
can
it's
find
free.
The apps. Don't forget about TuneIn as well. And we love you guys in the chat room. So what do we have today? What do we have planned before we bring on Bruce?
I did want to mention, somebody sent us a T-shirt design that was pretty cool. Thanks to you guys who've been sending in the T-shirt designs.
It is interesting.
Item, and it was a pretty good design.
I don't have it queued up, but it was it pretty much was like our website logo on its side, and then with the Constitution like faded. It was pretty cool looking, honestly. I thought it was a pretty neat design.
Yeah,
and it was a black shirt with the Constitution text.
Maybe we'll make some organic ones like that. Organic shirts, that is. Get them from real sheep. None of these,
Right. So I don't know, Kristan, did you want to just bring on Bruce and get right into it?
I'll go ahead and bring Bruce on here. And Bruce is, by the way, he's in Ecuador right now, and he's basically a specialist of mine in history, and he has a lot of interesting things to say as far as he lives right by pyramids. How cool is that? I'd take the Jeep up on a pyramid, huh, Mike? Yeah. Why don't you see that in the Chevy commercial?
You know, you should, but you know they tow around the space shuttle and stuff. So
Sure. Bruce, do we have you there? Oh,
I don't think we have Bruce just yet. We're trying. We will get Bruce, that's for sure. He's ready for us. But we can mention the website for the info that we're going to be talking with Bruce is earthforall.net. And, you know, they have some pretty interesting stuff on this website. Like, it goes into some really old rock formations in the middle of the jungle in the Ecuador, Peru
the
jungle.
big thing is we've been mistaking mountains and hills for pyramids for years, and what they're finding out is underneath all this dirt and soot is actual pyramids and actual rock layers. So a lot of the mountains, like the one that is being discovered in Ecuador, and we might get into that tonight, the Lost City of Giants, with Bruce, because I believe he had some interest in that. Let me give him a call here. We'll try to give him a holler back.
Yeah, just try to add him back to the call. It's definitely all interesting. Like I was mentioning before when we were talking with Bruce, I watched the Joe Rogan show from yesterday where he was talking with Graham Hancock about this very same thing, where history has been manipulated so much over time. You guys don't understand. Can you even imagine? Imagine a car, and now imagine 30,000 years from now. Will that car still be the same car that is, you imagined after 30,000 years? I don't even think your brain can comprehend that, literally, because 30,000 years is so much time, to put it in context, the revolution, the United States Revolution, was like 240 years ago. I mean,
and that's a small blip on the map, comparatively speaking.
So,
but we do have Bruce with us. How you doing, Bruce?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
How is it in South America? You got nice weather? We're like, I think we got 30 degrees here.
Well, usually, yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of rain the last few days. We've got a volcano near me, and if it blows up, which it does a lot, the rain starts pouring down. It doesn't kill me, thankfully, but it does cause rain.
It just sounds threatening. The mention of a volcano is something that's rare to us Midwestern Americans.
But I think that tornadoes would sound really weird to somebody like Bruce, though, because he doesn't see tornadoes, I don't think. Do you?
I mean, in the UK, I didn't really see very much at all. There wasn't any volcanoes. We hardly have tornadoes, I've certainly seen a lot more extremes here than in the UK. So
So I don't even know where to start with Bruce. Where do we start with Bruce Fenton, Kristan?
Yeah, Bruce, tell us a little bit about what got you involved in Mayan history, truth and history, and we should definitely touch base on the Klaus Dana find in what was it, Ecuador? He found bones that belonged to a 25-foot tall giant human skeleton.
Yeah, like a sort of man you could imagine fighting a dinosaur or something. You know, that height. That's incredible.
I wonder how often they were cannibal, because you always hear in these stories like Jack and the Beanstalk, he's going to cook them, and then in Homer, Cyclops, they were going to cook them. And in the Philippines, they found Cyclops skeleton, that's I believe in 2003, and then the next day the newspaper retracted it, saying that the skulls could no longer, or their vertebrae, there's no way they could hold a skull that large or something like that, but it had one eye right in the center, and you can find that article online.
Before we get into all that, though, let's let Bruce introduce himself and kind of introduce earthforall.net. What got you motivated even in covering these type of subjects?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. I suppose obviously there's always a long story, but I guess the short story of it is that I suppose my upbringing, my father was, I guess, well, sort of a communist, I suppose, if I'm honest. I mean, always very popular in the US, communism, but yeah, he kind of was, and because of that, he was a sort of radical, I suppose, and he was a bit of an outcast. And he used to tell me a lot about things like, you know, the conspiracies in Latin America, the US with the CIA, and what happened to bear pigs, and so, you know, because he was involved with like young communists when he was younger, he had a lot of these, you know, this knowledge of this other stuff that didn't get covered in the media. I mean, he's not a communist in the sense of China where they're killing everyone. You know, he believed everyone should share things, basically. But yeah, because of that, I suppose I had an upbringing where I heard about things like, you know, the feds flying cocaine, you know, and all of these kind of things. So I knew from an early age that the world was not as it appeared, nor was it as it should be. So that's where it started, with the conspiracy side of things. That evolved into a realization that the conspiracy itself was like, you know, a multi-tentacled being, that, you know, its tentacles went into everything, into finance, into ancient history, into our schooling, our money systems, you know. So it was a gradual realization that what I'd grown up being taught, that things were not as they should be, actually was a much bigger subject. It wasn't just the politics and that aspect of the conspiracy. It was multifaceted. So it's been a gradual incline of realizing the next topic, the next topic, the next topic in this, you know, web.
It seems all the time like the web never ends. Like the web is just continuing on. You think you have a history figured out, you think you have something figured out, and then all of a sudden, oh, a new discovery or a new technology. It's always something new.
We should talk about, how do these things go missing in history? How is it that things like pyramids are mistaken as hills, and the government obviously is known, like, I believe, what is it, in Japan they have hills that are pyramids, and
Yonaguni and all that,
yeah, and they don't allow their people there because for no reason, but they're just normal hills, but
a lot of that was
pyramids.
Rumored, but with satellite imagery it's becoming more evident that they're all over, right?
They're aligned to the stars. I think they call it astroarchaeology, where they actually build the pyramids according to different constellations.
That's right. So we're starting to see that there was a really advanced understanding of sort of our place in space, if you like, and of course how the planet moved, how it, you know, relates to the sun, how the sun related to the greater cosmos. You know, we're starting to see that in ancient times these people were so aware of it and incredibly, you know, tuned into it, that they actually built, you know, entire cities mapping the stars. You know, whereas today, you know, it's just such an undertaking. We would never attempt to even build a village that mapped the stars. It just doesn't, to us now, doesn't make sense. And we look back at these massive projects and see that there was a completely different way of thinking.
Do you think that's because there was seriously ancient civilization with technology far beyond our own? What I was mentioning to Kristan before we brought you on is, you know, people can't really comprehend 30,000 years ago. People can't really comprehend 60,000 years ago, because, you know, the concept of time that long, it blows your brain. You can't really think about it. So if there is evidence of an ancient culture, it's going to be things like stone. It's going to be things like pyramids. It's not going to be metal. Everybody's like, oh, what did they cut it with? Where are the laser beams? All that stuff would have gone to the earth. You know what I mean? But the things that would be left are stone, pyramids, and they are still there. So,
one of the things I wanted to mention, we were talking about how the stars and everything line up. One of the oldest and ancient text around called the Books of Enoch. It's chapter 4. It talks about how all the planets and the way they work and how they dance around each other in that order as the rest of the world is conceived. And it talks about how the mathematical equation behind, what keeps all the galaxies together is actually the most important thing in the answer to everything that we perceive out there. And it was pretty interesting, and it was very in depth. And I think that's why it was very important to them. They like to say ancient man was stupid, but I like to think they were smarter than we are today. There's no way I could go build a whole village based off of like Orion's belt, nonetheless pyramids.
Or even get anyone to help you. I mean, Mike, I was just going to say, actually, what you said there about the stone technology. I mean, this is one for people to think about. That we've got these ancient civilizations, say in Latin America, that had pieces of obsidian, which apparently you could stare into these obsidian mirrors, and divine information. Okay, fine, but that, in a way, sounds a lot like staring into your iPad. This black piece of stone that they could stare into and get all this information. Now, was that just replicating an older technology that was like our iPods? They saw people walking around with these black pieces of stone, and then they got this information out of it. So they thought, well, if we just smash a bit of stone and make it look the same, maybe we can do that. We have to start questioning when they say to us that, there was stone you could stare into information. Maybe they weren't just trancing out and imagining things. Maybe there really was technologies like that, and that we need to re-question a lot of this. I think you're right. That's but also the fact that we look at our technology now, they look like stones, and we are using crystal and stone, in some of our technology.
Well,
so
how about ancient maps as an example? There's all those ancient maps where they show like islands in the Atlantic that are no longer there.
Sure. And
I think it wasn't at you that brought that up to me, that Atlantis.
There was one in Ecuador.
Yeah,
there's one in Ecuador that's found. Yeah. They found it in a place called La Mana, which is mostly known for, in alternative circles, I suppose. It's not really known otherwise, but it's known for its special kind of water that comes up in one spring in that area, which has, what's it called, monoatomic silver and gold particles, or nanoatomic, or something. But these tiny particles of gold and silver in the water. And apparently there's only like 3 springs in the world that are like this. They naturally have this high content. But in that same area, they found a mine. An ancient mine was broken through into in a mining operation, and they found, amongst the other objects in there, they found this stone which represented the globe. It was a pretty crude map, but on the map there were at least 2 land masses that are no longer there, or you could say, well, that shouldn't be on a map. So suggesting that this was a really ancient map of the world, in which there were land masses that are now gone. So yeah, I mean, of course there are other maps like that.
There's the last continent was Lemuria. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Lemuria comes up a lot. Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. I mean, I think there's some arguments to say whether Lemuria and Mu are the same, but there seems to be at least 2 major land masses that the ancients talk about that are now no longer on our maps. I think, if I understand it right, Lemuria is kind of in the Asia area, north of Australia. Sort of, it took up some of that area between there and Thailand, and that, whereas Atlantis is obviously supposedly more closer to the US and perhaps the Caribbean, or a bit further down, but generally in that area. So you've got this idea that, so Bimini, they talk about the Bimini Road, that up in Bimini there's been a find, it's an old find now, but of a road going into the sea, which is made of carved blocks and stuff, and they say this is supposedly part of Atlantis. And some finds recently you guys were probably seeing with this scanning near Cuba, which apparently treasure hunter ship or something picked up sonar images of what looks like Mayan-style temples.
And some of these things are underwater, and they say the ocean level has never been lower than 100 feet than what it is today. But some of these, like in the Mediterranean, they have them 340, 380 feet below sea level. And here off the coast of, by the Bermuda Triangle, and some even deeper are 800 feet. So the Earth at one time must have had much less water on it.
Or it wasn't where you think it is.
Or it isn't where it was.
Yeah.
There must have been a dam.
Or the actual planet, somehow has dipped in some areas and gone out in others, so that there's been, I can't remember the exact term. I know there's a correct geographical term for this, but where basically you have a folding in of, say the ocean floor and a mountain erupts somewhere else. It kind of balances out. So there's the possibility that there was, I think, plate deformation. That's what it's called. Where, as one part goes down, another part went up. It's just, can be related to things like axial pole shifts, or, really extreme events which would somehow deform the crust of the planet, making a landmass go down and another one go up. Obviously, that's a controversial theory, but it would explain in part how these things could be so deep underwater. Because
could it have been a contributor to a great flood?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, with anything like that, you're going to have, especially if it's a pole shift, you're going to have a massive flood. I mean, one of the issues with an axial pole shift, assuming one can happen, and there is evidence to show they have, you basically, if you imagine the surface of the planet, for people out there, if you imagine the surface of the planet, it shifts even, say, 5 degrees or some small amount. The problem is that once the crust moves, you've still got the air and water going in the same direction of rotation of the planet as it was. And the problem with that, of course, is then it goes over bits of land that were before not obviously in the path of the waves. Suddenly, they're crashing over the land at immense speeds and with winds traveling at immense speeds. So you have this unbelievable disaster event. And again, with that, you get plate deformation because as the new equator forms, you'll have a rising of land around the equator, because at the moment, of course, the equator is the highest part of the planet into the atmosphere. So as that has to fall down and the new equator forms, you get this plate deformation. So you get the most radical earthquakes imaginable, like 20 on the scale, this kind of thing. So you've got a triple combo of the ocean going over you, high-speed winds, and these earthquakes. So I mean, it's an unbelievable.
It's going to mess a lot of things up.
Sure. Do you believe in the growing Earth theory?
It's a day off work.
Do you believe in the growing Earth theory, that the Earth is actually growing and that's what's really pulled a lot of the continents apart?
I've heard a couple of versions. Actually, my dad sort of subscribes to this. He's always looking for the answer to how that relates to sort of gravity, though. So, I know there's issues in this. So, I mean, I don't hold to it myself. No, I don't, to be honest. I mean, I think it might be true, but I just personally, it hasn't convinced me yet. I haven't seen enough evidence to convince me. I mean, there's plenty of other... I think there's other explanations for the things that people try and explain with that theory.
Like
and
basically the water moving around. That's an easily explained thing, that the water could be in another spot. You got to understand too how much Earth hasn't been excavated yet. What could be under this Earth? You don't really know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a firm believer in the hollow Earth theory, that the planet is actually hollow, and that not so much in gravity, but magnetic current is what really holds us as planet, and that are actually gravities in the crust of the planet rather than at the center of the Earth.
Well, yeah, I mean, this electric universe theory, which suggests that, of course, that electrical charges have a lot more to do with the way planets work than gravity does, and the way that the universe is basically held together. And it's, obviously with planets spinning and planets spinning around stars and stars spinning around galactic cores and galaxies spinning around some sort of universal center, that really it's all to do with an electrical discharge coming out of this universal center, and that gravity is a very weak force, as we know. It's called a weak force, whereas electricity and electrical charges can be immensely strong forces. And so the argument is, of course, that, well, why are we trying to pin everything on this weak force when we know there's much stronger forces at work? And I think that there's some truth to that. We can't just, I think there's a lot in our understanding of physics and astrophysics that, raises a lot of issues. I mean, just on one example, because I know there's a lot of things to cover, but for people that, don't really get this electrical universe theory, if you just take the sun as a simple example, when you look at the sun, there's a few anomalies. The first thing is that, if it's just a big ball of fire, a nuclear fire, then as you go in towards it, it should get hotter and hotter. It's very simple. Anyone can get their head around that. But no, instead we find it's hotter millions of miles out than it is on the surface. Now, that doesn't make any sense. The next thing you have is that when there's a sunspot, it's black because it's cooler. And that you see into the core through the sunspot, these holes, and it's black because it's cooler. Now, how can it be cooler in the middle? If it's a nuclear furnace, it doesn't make any sense. The only thing that makes sense is if the electrical charge is coming in from outside. Well, so, we really need to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah, and it seems
very interesting.
Maybe we just are egotistical humans that think we have everything figured out, and we really are just trapped in our own universe, literally.
Well, I think that's something me and Bruce talked about, was when the Sumerian writing about the Anunnaki coming here, that we were actually created, but our DNA was changed or altered, and we were created in God's image, but there was already species here prior to Earth, like a pre-Adamic period, prior to man. They were mining here gold for their atmosphere. Isn't it what the Sumerian texts say, I believe?
Yeah, I think with the Sumerian texts, my only issue with them, of course, is that, they are propaganda, from the Anunnaki. So, of course, they put things in their way, which is that, they came here and they created mankind. okay, well, if we take it on faith that some beings came here and that we're calling the Anunnaki, but why should we believe that they're going to tell us the true story? That they want to make out that they created us. Well, I think they modified people, but I think that there was people on this planet already. That's
Well, and look at the
just
proof.
Their version.
Look at the proof, and look at the pyramids. Look at Egypt. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah,
that
Coral
is
Castle ties into that too with Edward Leeds Scullman, wouldn't you say, when we talk pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
sorry.
Well, I was just saying, Egypt is the best example we have today, I would say, because you have these technologies, you have these pyramids, you have the Sphinx, and there's so many anomalies that don't fit in already. Obviously, the time frames don't fit. You're talking 30,000 years when they say it's 30 years and things like that. There's the time frames don't fit, so it makes you wonder.
Well, the pyramids were supposedly built in 20 years, they say, and Edward Leeds Scullman
20 years, not 30 years, right?
Yeah, there's so many anomalies with Egypt. When I went to Egypt a couple of years ago, one of my friends is a researcher out there, Richard Gabriel. People can look up his work. And because of his work out there, he has a lot of contacts, and he was able to take me to areas that the average tourist does not go to. And one thing I'll tell you that I saw, which really blew my mind, was out in the desert, not far from the pyramid, but away from where the tourists are allowed to go. It's a police-controlled area. You have to have contacts to go there. We were taken at night, in a police car, funnily enough. But I mean, I was anyway. He arranged, through contacts that I could go there to an area to get allowed through by police and all this. This is before the government changed. So it may
they
not
must have a lot of donut shops there.
They need to. There's a lot of cops swimming around there.
Yeah.
But these people, I mean, they may not be in their jobs anymore. The things have changed. This is obviously before the revolution. But I was able to go through to an area where there was what looked to me like concrete bunkers. Just out in the middle of the desert, there was about 4 or 5 of them. You go through a doorway, you go down some steps, down a corner, and then there's a square, perfectly square shaft you go down into, and it goes off into these tunnels. And, as you look at it, you just see in your mind people running into this thing in a disaster. It looks like a bunker, nothing like the other Egyptian structures. And this is a place that obviously the tourists are not allowed to go. No one's supposed to see this place. It's not even supposed to exist. But it's clear that some event happened in that area a long time ago, which involved them building escape bunkers to go underground. So I mean, that's not part of history, is it?
Well,
there's no record of that in
history.
history.
And the thing is, first of all, I'd like to mention about the Anunnaki is that they're also in the Bible. They talk about Anunnaki. I think it wasn't Goliath an offspring of Og, which was Anunnaki.
Kristan just takes it way over.
Well, I like to get into the detail. But
I know, but
it's the history behind it.
I got you.
I think it's really interesting. But going forward, with the whole Egyptian things in those shafts, it's crazy how they try to stop history and prevent the truth from getting out. What's wrong with allowing us to learn from actual history?
Yeah, it's just funny that there's this fear, isn't it? Because I mean, and some of it is so bizarre in a way. But I mean, if you take again, the Giza Plateau. I mean, if you translate the Egyptian word for Giza and all that, it means mouth of the tunnels. But then in the official account, they say there's no tunnels there. Okay, so why is it called mouth of the tunnels? It's total nonsense. They know that the place is riddled with tunnels and underground structures and all this stuff is even in the name of the place. But yet we're not allowed to know. So clearly they feel that us knowing this obvious fact will somehow impair their ability to control us. So, it straight away flags up there must be a conspiracy in history that advantages some people already in power. Otherwise they wouldn't bother with it. Like I say, there has to be a reason. There has to be a fear in the top echelons that there's something about our history which will allow us to throw off the control.
And it's not like they're trying to hide it, though. It's like sitting there in plain sight. It's like, that's not a mountain. That's a pyramid. Yeah, and they just try to say, no, that's not. That's a mountain. No, it's a pyramid. There's rock.
The good thing about the pyramids region is they're so big that they can't, that we could never have missed them. That thankfully the ancients built at least a few structures that just cannot be, ignored. And that's really obviously the one that probably gets most people in the world involved with the ancient mysteries is the existence of the pyramid and the Sphinx, and why they're there and why anyone would build something like that. That thank goodness somebody in the past realized we were going to need something that just could not be ignored, and that is a structure you can't ignore. I mean, there's so many theories on it, but we do know that it seems to resonate with earth frequencies. There's evidence that water flowed through part of it, creating pressure waves and energy. And I don't know if you noticed, but the sides of the pyramid are concaved. So you have this like line down the middle of each one. So they're like refractors of energy and of light. So when they were covered in limestone once upon a time, they would have refracted light to specific locations around the plateau. So you have all this sort of stuff built in that you can't ignore, which shows that there was an ancient technology and an ancient knowledge, that was there.
In the pyramids, they don't have any scalding on the top of the roofs of the pyramids, so they didn't use fire torches inside the pyramids. Where did they get the light for inside the pyramids? And on the walls, they have these big light bulb looking things on the wall. So did they have electricity already back then? Was it already used?
The thing is, too, but we don't even know what the pyramids were truly used for. That's a thing that it's a common misconception. Like, they say tombs. Well, what if the late pharaohs came and said, I want to use this building that was already here as my tomb?
Sure.
That's the thing that I think happened. Another a later class of Egyptians, pharaoh, whatever, came and claimed those structures as their own, and they forgot over time. Oh, we built that. We built that. You know what I mean? Sure. And it's just it's like Stonehenge and all these things. It'll be forgot over time who really made
people
it.
Claim
right.
It's like with the Sphinx, isn't it? That they know the face has been recarved. For a pharaoh that wanted his face on it. So as you say, people come along, they adopt these sites and say, well, it's mine, and I'm going to put my face on it, and with most of the pyramids, certainly with the big pyramids in Egypt, there was no evidence that they were used as burial chambers, but the smaller ones, yes, there were smaller ones where they were buried in, and whether those were based on the same technologies or not, we're not sure, but certainly the three big ones, really don't seem to be designed as tombs specifically. There's a sarcophagus in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, but there was no body found in it, and I know for a fact when you lie in there, and I've tried this, if you lie in there and you intone a frequency that resonates with that room, you start having the beginning of an out-of-body experience. You start feeling, and I've had out-of-body experience, you start feeling heavy, you start feeling separate from your body. I mean, the guard said, you got to get out now, so I couldn't carry on with that experiment, but I've had a friend who's done that on a longer period of time, bribing the guards, and and did see a tunnel open in front of him and saw stuff through this tunnel. So I mean, it's a technology to allow you to open some kind of communication or some kind of travel with somewhere else, whether that's dimensional
travel,
or I'd say kind of other dimensional, more than necessarily spatial,
So how do you think they built these pyramids in 20 years? I know I mentioned the Coral Castle and
if it
was 20 years, do you think that they had the help of giants? They show all these different creatures on their walls, some of them 2 or 3 times the size of the humans next to them comparatively on the paintings on these walls. What's your opinion on the giants and where did they come from? And a lot of people, they don't really believe it, even though our great grandparents did,
Well, in the US, of course, you've got a large number of mounds, haven't you, that have been uncovered with that. So people in the US should know that there were giants. But yeah, I mean, I'd say that with the Egypt side, I mean, an example actually is the I don't know if people out there would know of but especially the burial tomb of Osiris. If I remember right, it's deep below the Sphinx. It was supposedly discovered by Zahi Hawass. But anyway, you go down this deep shaft, and in the bottom, there's this incredible tomb with a 9-foot sarcophagus surrounded by these 4 giant engraved pillars and then surrounded by this circle of water. And it's supposed to be the actual burial place of the god, Osiris. Now, obviously, gods aren't meant to have burial chambers for a start. And then on top of that, why is the sarcophagus 9 foot tall? If this was some sort of humanoid, why does he need such a big sarcophagus? Who was this guy? So even in Egypt, again, you have the physical evidence of these abnormally tall people who had positions of power over the others. Just as we see in other areas, we see in the Central America, South America, and Sumeria, again, in these legends of these very tall people who were in positions of power. So I mean, it does seem to be a universal history. And people say a myth, but when you find the sarcophaguses and stuff, you have to say, is that a myth or is that something with physical archaeology?
Well, how can science deny these large skeletons, and why is it that the science community is so scared to acknowledge them as legitimate?
Because I don't think they know. I don't think they know, Kristan. I think it's more or less they don't know if
it's the
these
federal
things
brainwashing
existed with the current human that we are today, or maybe this was a human type being that existed many, many years ago, and we're just unearthing their skeletons now.
I find it interesting, though, in history. Like, I think it was the Quran, they say Adam and Eve were, 33 feet tall. So even back
Not to mention the years that, like, Moses was, how old? 500 years old or something like that?
Lived a fair time.
Yeah.
Right.
And they had giants. Amos was a 2 said they were as tall as cedars before they went to Jericho, and Jericho was built by giants, they said.
Yeah. They weren't people like us, were they? I mean, when you look at all of these accounts from around the world, although they're supposedly we're the, the offspring a long way down the line, it's obvious that they're not talking about people like us, really, because, once upon a time, people were, a lot of them were living very long time or were very big, or both. So there was obviously something very strange going on back then, because, I mean, people like to say, this is one thing that gets me, people always like to say that, in the old times, they had all these silly stories, these myths and legends and blah, 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 they made it all up. But then, they were like us, they were human beings like us, and we don't sit around writing whole books of made up history, I mean, okay, there are some, but, you couldn't pass it by all the other authorities, all the people, and say, this is what happened.
But they kind of are, Bruce. They kind of are, because look at 9/11,
to a degree.
JFK, you got some interesting events. Now, we can't prove one way or another, but see, that's the whole thing.
It's not that dramatically changed. There's still a lot of truth to it.
But those events that shape our little tiny history will be forgotten in the scope of the world's history.
I think you can get away with some of it, but I mean, if you take, say, for example, the Indian Vedas, and they talk about these Vimanas, flying around like the biggest cities, some of them firing rockets that left people nuclear radiated from the descriptions, unable to quench the fire by going in water, and you think this is one of their most accepted holy books and their account of history, and you'd think that if someone wrote that down and they were the chief historian and said, look, this is what I'm going to record as our history, that everyone else would say, come on, I didn't see no flying city flying around shooting missiles. You're mental. You're mentally ill. We're not keeping this book. It's nonsense. So I don't see how something like that can become the most sacred history of a country.
For generation after generation.
Everyone would just say that didn't happen. That's nonsense, and the book would, after a generation or two, would go into the rubbish bin. But they've lasted thousands of years.
Well, and compared to Greek culture and the gods like Zeus and Poseidon, they were giants of some kind as well.
Their offsprings, they're Nephilim. They were men of renown with magical powers, and they speak of those too, watchers and stars and everything else.
Yeah, and everyone's got they've all got these strange handheld devices in it, whether it's a hammer or a lightning rod, or they all seem to have some kind of technology that they're holding on to, which fires out weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't they just, if they're gods, why can't they just do it with their hands? Just wave their hands. They always seem to have some object that they're firing out of.
In a cloud, like a ship.
That's technology.
Well,
and they fly in things. Yeah. Why can't they just fly like Superman if they're a god? That's my question.
They do talk about flying carpets, don't they? In Persian history, they talk about the flying carpets.
Flying carpets. You look around the world, everyone has either chariots or a magic horse or a flying carpet. But why aren't they just flying like Superman? Because if I was a god, I would assume that I'd have the power just to fly in the air. Why would I need all these contraptions and these lightning rods? It doesn't. It sounds like a technology, not like an omnipresent deity.
Bruce, I want to ask you, what is so important about the Ecuador and Peru area that, like the articles that you wrote recently? What's so important going on over there?
Sure. I mean, it's an area, Latin America, it's an area that I haven't studied intensively. Obviously, over the years, I've looked at things like the Nazca lines, which, seem to have been, designed to be seen from the air. So we know something strange was going on. Massive symbols designed to be seen from the air in Peru.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, totally crazy. There's no reason for these things. They're out in the middle of nowhere.
And it was years ago before we even had flights, so these things have been around, thousands of years? So who are they for? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got these mega structures that, are made of stone blocks of like 200 tons. I mean, I've worked here a little bit in the building trade. I'm not a builder, but I know one thing. When you're on a building site and say a metal girder comes to site, which is maybe a couple of tons, you're intimidated. It's like, geez, that girder's here. We've got to deal with that thing. It's it's dangerous. You've got to manipulate into place. It's a problem. Imagine they say to you, come on, lads, the 200-ton blocks here.
It seems ridiculous. Yeah, it seems ridiculous.
We'll have them right in. We'll have them.
What, have you ever
got they had cement in between them too? They had to put they had mortar in between them, I believe.
Some of them had mortar. Some did.
So that means somebody had to been. That means they had to been strategically placed there.
quite. I mean, some of them are, you can't fit a razor blade between the gaps between them. Like, who do you know who works in the building trade that says, I like to get the kind of precision on my job where a razor blade won't go through the... Come on. Who does that? Nobody.
Well, it would have to be some either diamond cutting
Amazingly
or laser
advanced, yeah.
etched. Who knows? We can speculate all day. You know what I mean? We really don't know.
Like the paint Ancient Man, though, is so stupid, though. And they weren't.
No, that's it. When you contrast it against us now, we all know what humans are like because we're humans. And if you took us back, 1,000 years and you put us on a building site, you can't say that with what we know of technology and science, that we'd be comfortable with those 200-ton blocks any more than they should have been. It's a fact that, it's just not reasonable to deal with these kind of objects because you would just say, well, how about we break it up into smaller blocks like bricks and build it with bricks? Because that's easy.
I use the big blocks,
why use the big block? There's no need. We know that you can effectively build huge structures with small blocks that are easy to use, and that when they fall on you, they don't kill the whole building team.
And somebody would have thought of that. You know what I mean? Somebody would have thought of that, right?
And people were doing it elsewhere because not all the buildings were built of it. So it seems to be the special
small
structure
blocks for big people. Small blocks for big people.
You mean big blocks for big people?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, big blocks.
And why is it the further back you go, it seems like the blocks get bigger instead of the opposite? It doesn't seem to make sense. We should be the ones here now dealing with 200-ton blocks with all our technology. So why aren't we trying to do it? Obviously we still feel that it's a stupid idea and that it doesn't match our technology. So you'd have to have something more advanced than what we have now to comfortably start building with 200-ton blocks. So that begs a big question. What technology were they using that made that an easy thing to do?
Well, how did we lose all this technology, in your opinion? I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, and I wanted you to give a chance to spread your idea behind how did we become so advanced at one point and lose it all?
Well, I mean, I personally do think that, once upon a time that there was a culture, a civilization that lasted for thousands of years, and it built up its technology to an extremely high level. And we've got to remember this planet is, a few billion years old or so, or 6 billion years old. So, there's been plenty of time. And of that many, millions of years, it's been inhabitable to human beings. There's no reason to accept the idea that we've only been here a few thousand years. So there's been time enough to have civilizations far more advanced than ours. And I would also say that, there's evidence for interaction with other entities, both physical aliens and multi-dimensional beings that have probably added to our understanding of science, or meddled with things, if you like. So I'd say it was a twofold rising that, we've probably had some outside help, I'd say, but also that we just had a long time to develop. How that ended, I would speculate that it was around 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age, and that there was a disaster event, possibly a comet impact, but something, or a pole shift, but something certainly caused a massive tidal waves, earthquakes, volcanism, and that this combined effect leveled our existing civilization.
Do you think the pyramids could have been arcs or ways of protection for those kind of occurrences? Because you see these pyramids on several different continents. These architects went to the same pyramid school. And what's the odds that so many people knew how to build pyramids just like that in that same style to the stars, nonetheless, and specific archaeological and latitude importance. Like you mentioned, there's a city that's out there that those pyramids are recently found that had strains of gold near them. So things like that, natural resources were important.
Yeah, I mean the find here, I do think is possibly to do with the flood. I mean, there's the aspect, if people aren't aware of it, about 18 months ago, a group went into the jungle, not too far from where I am in Ecuador, and found what is a wall of what seems to be megalithic blocks. So, I mean, like 2-ton blocks, it looks like. It's done in a style that's similar to some of the ancient Peruvian structures. Not known yet whether there's a greater structure, because there's a lot of soil and jungle plants on this thing, but the images off my website, show this wall. But the thing that's interesting is their stone tools are scattered around in the area. I think many of them have been stolen now, but I've seen photos of a lot of them. And the things that gets me, of course, is that these are just scattered around. And you sort of wonder, why would someone do that? Just throw their tools away. But if that was part of that disaster event, that either the earthquakes or the flooding, and then these people literally were either swept away or just dropped their tools and ran because it was a disaster event. You find that elsewhere, and I know we've talked about that off of offline sort of in Kristen with the idea that, you know, there's a lot of sites where it seems that people just abandoned it, or at is it Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where they literally buried the whole city. You know, they knew something was coming and they buried the city, and the people just disappeared.
That's,
you know,
and that's ludicrous if you tell anyone today.
Burying your city. Yeah, if you said like now, you know, there's a prediction of a volcano or an earthquake going off. No, let's flee, okay, but let's first bury the city under sand.
The bulldozers out,
well,
bringing
what
the
about
dirt.
the whole Mayan and Aztec cultures? They basically disappeared out of nowhere too.
And they weren't there first. It was the Olmecs were there first, weren't they? The Olmecs,
yeah, the Olmecs
driven out by
came
giants.
first. Yeah, the Olmecs came first. And yeah, I know there's a, you know, speculation that they may be some kind of giants or Africans that were very tall. But yeah, we're unlike the normal indigenous people of Central America. They seem to have been the ones that have handed on the calendars to the Mayans, and a lot of the science understanding. The Mayans obviously taking this to greater heights, it would seem. But yeah, they did abandon their cities. A lot of the cities of the Mayans were abandoned way before the Spanish arrived. There's this sort of misconception the Spanish came in and destroyed the Mayan Empire, but really what was left of the Mayans were the people out in the jungles and the villages and stuff. The cities were mostly abandoned.
Well, we talked about that before, how Miami is actually called Miami because it's rumored that the Mayans were there, and they're finding Mayan paint in like the Carolinas or in that area. I mean, it's Georgia, I believe they found it. So they must have been up this far north. Mm-hmm. So the Mayans must have been, you know, across both Americas.
Yeah. In my understanding, the Maya, you know, at least some areas of the Maya culture had an event which involved contact with an alien race. I mean, this is, you know, so this is my opinion. I'd have to back it up with evidence at some point, but that they've left their cities because they had to leave because they were being overrun by a race that's called the Greys. You know, this is not all the cities. I can't speak for all the cities, but one city I've been looking at, Palenque, it seems to be evidence that this city fell because of a contact event which went horribly wrong, and eventually the city was abandoned. I mean, it sounds wacky, but people should look at Palenque and look at some of the carvings. You've got giant people. You've got all sorts of
when you start to think about it, though, they say if you take a picture of one section of the sky at night, there's a trillion stars, and mathematically there's the chance of life in that picture because of the fact mathematically there's so many planets. The odds that there is life out there is overwhelming. So the odds of us being colonized here is more likely than, let's say, a Big Bang theory or, you know, through evolution that we were actually planted here per se.
Sure.
I think humans are just narrow-minded. You know, history, current history is narrow-minded. It's based on paper text that's only been around for
a lot of it's been
5,000 years. Mm-hmm. It's all the history that the elite classes have wanted them to control. It's been heavily guarded over time. History is very important. We mentioned it, how they scrub the walls, they rewrite history, they change the face of the Sphinx. They do this kind of stuff to protect the truth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do this so they can continue the slave class, continue on controlling and using whatever benefits they have, whether it's another race, whether it's another dimension, whatever. They're benefiting somehow, some way, and keeping the average population under control. But Bruce, I do want to give you the last few minutes to tell us about your website, earthforall.net. You have books and all kinds of new information coming out, so why don't you tell us about it?
Sure, yeah, thank you. Earthforall.net is where at the moment I'm covering obviously this the developments with this megalithic ruin find in the jungle in Ecuador. So if people want to go to that site, they'll see as the updates come on, you know, they'll be there. Also, there's a link there to the recent collaborative book, which is Ancient Aliens in Australia, which is a collaboration with researchers from ForgottenOrigin.com. Is to do with, well, megalithic sites that have been found in Australia, evidence of Egyptians being there, possible evidence of a race of extraterrestrials being there. So it's a controversial subject, of course, but people will find that, you know, we provide both some physical evidence and metaphysical evidence and speculation. So that's a book that, you know, is recent. That came out in September. So I'd sort of recommend people to have a look at that. I have an old website, 2012rising.com, which I have a lot of articles on, which covers everything from conspiracy to, you know, esoteric, the Mayan calendar, a lot of stuff on there as well. So if people want to look back at my older work, they just go to the articles section on there. There's a lot more articles, 100 articles or so on there. So that's the current thing, and obviously, yeah, the main project at the moment, I suppose, is this city in the jungle. And I suppose the very quick rundown, just so people know where that's at now, is that the Ecuadorian government, you know, are going to send a team in there. It will be in the next few weeks. and they've said that they will allow me to to go along with them and to act as, I guess, as an independent media, to cover. And I won't be doing.
Well, that's good because it'd be nice to see because we saw those giant hammerheads that no normal sized person is going to swing.
Yeah,
they're like 3 or 4 times the size of a normal human hammerhead. Those things are huge, and it'd be nice to see if you find any giant artifacts and giant humans, because that is
for sure
what you believe to be the lost city of giants, which is very possible a second Sumerian city, is what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long have we got. We got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll very quickly say that the connection to Sumeria and Ecuador. There's a couple of different ones. I just want to bring up. I'll move to another pyramid quickly that I know I wanted to bring up with you guys, which is called the Pyramid of Punai. It's about an hour from me. It's the highest built pyramid in the Andes. It's also the oldest pyramid in Latin America, 4,700 and something years old. But anyway, the interesting thing about this pyramid is the legends that surround it. They say that a long time ago, obviously at least around 5,000 years ago, whatever it was, that there was a great flood, and 2 brothers went up this hill to this site. And when they went up there, they were looked after and fed by these women who had bird heads. Yeah, and that they were looking after these people, and they survived the flood up there. And you think, well, hang on, where have I seen bird-headed beings? That's Sumeria, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you find that not far from this other side in the jungle,
Mike has a beard.
Yeah, there's a place not far from this other side in the jungle where they found gold objects which were engraved with Sumerian deities, those old bird-headed people again. So, I mean, even though we're down in Ecuador and you wouldn't see a logical connection to Sumeria and the Anunnaki, there are objects here and legends that exactly match the stories. So, and I know that other researchers claim that Enki was in Peru, that Enki and some of the others were here as part of their gold mining mission.
And there's geological importance with that location as well, right? Longitude, latitude, wide.
Well, where we are, yeah, that's right. It's near. Well, obviously, we're not too far from the equator, but apparently, the native people believed that was the true equator. So in
hence
days,
Ecuador.
And it could have changed by then. It could have changed. It could have shifted.
That's right. Well, that's the thing. They're saying that the old times that they believed that this area was exactly on the equator and it was the center of the world. And it's even today, it's not that far off. So again, if you had a slight shifting of the axis of the planet, very slight, it would move it. And especially if it's over a long period of time. It is accepted that the planet can be moved by earthquakes and things gradually. So it is possible that it was once upon a time it really was the equator. So it's funny these legends are there and that it's built so near to the equator, or perhaps on an old true equator. So it would have been important, of course, from that geogrid that the ancients.
Bruce Fenton in Ecuador, thanks again for coming on our show. We're gonna have to have you back once you hit that. Once you go to that pyramid, we want to get you on. As soon as you're done with that, let us know about that. Get us some information. We want to get it out there. I'm a big advocate for truth and history, and these giant skeletons are definitely part of it. Whether what role they play, we do know that they are in history, and we got to expose them.
Kristan gets excited about the giants. It is part of history, but I'm a fan of ancient culture altogether.
Ancient culture altogether.
But I didn't even get to say this. I don't know what part gravity took on the shrinking maybe of the human. You know what I mean? So we could get into all that type of thing. But Bruce, we really appreciate it.
I just think it was a separate race. It was a separate race of humanoids.
We're going to have to, we'll talk about it for sure.
Tie things up. But I will just quickly say that I know that I read something recently about, the giant dragonflies that used to fly around like 2-meter wingspans or something. And they say that today they couldn't possibly take off. So something in our environment was different back then, in the dinosaur times or whatever, that allowed things to get bigger. So it is weird. It
could be possible, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely
something changed.
The site is earthforall.net. What was the name of the book again?
That was Ancient Aliens in Australia.
That's the newest one. You can check it out on the site. All right, Bruce, we'll definitely be in touch anytime. You're welcome back on. Have a nice night, all right?
Yeah, we got to talk soon.
Thank you, Mike.
And you have a good one, Bruce, and we'll definitely talk soon. We definitely have to follow up. I'm really excited about your finds, and maybe I'll venture down there to check out some giants here.
Kristan's going to go on a
journey. December, January, who knows? Jim Vieira from Ancient American Magazine and we were chatting about that. So we'll talk soon, Bruce. We'll talk to you after.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. I love being on.
Take it easy.
Catch you again.
So there goes Bruce. Definitely a cool talk. I know, Kristan, you get so excited over the Giants. I could just hear it in your voice. You're like, you're so excited.
I have so much information and questions I want to ask a guy like that. I mean, I talk to him, every once in a while, and he's very knowledgeable because it's common knowledge down there, giant skeletons. Much like the American Indians believed in the red-haired giants, which were, tall, and the gray giants, which were cannibal tall. And they said they were 3 times the size of a normal human, and that's Indian history. So
it's definitely all interesting. We're definitely gonna get Bruce back on. We do have an awesome guest that's gonna not really tie into the Giants, but ancient history. Santos Bonacci tomorrow is going to be joining us, and he's in the Australia area, so he's going to be getting into astrotheology, the zodiac, a lot of things that may tie into some of this.
And we could ask him about astroarchaeology and things of that nature. So.
Right. So that's what we got planned for tomorrow.
And at the end of the month, we also have Klaus Dana, the guy actually who discovered that 25-foot tall human skeleton.
Right, so we'll get more first-hand perspective. Make sure you guys check out the sponsors, private internet access on the site, Block It Pocket, download the apps. Anything else, Kristan, before we're out of here?
Oh, yeah, sign up, check our website, share articles, send us emails, and keep sending us cool ideas. If you guys can make cool, memes or, any kind of graphics, or keep sending in the t-shirt designs. We'll print a couple of them. So you guys stay tuned. Is Harry next?
No.
No Harry tonight.
No, he's not live.
Run down Bitcoin and PayPal because we need it. No, just kidding. We don't need it bad. So.
All right, guys, we're out of here. Kristan is clearly flustered tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow.
No, I'm excited, man. I'm like a kid in the playground right now. I like talking to Bruce. I always get excited.
It's all right, man. It's all right. We feel you. We feel your bro love. We feel it. It's all right, guys. We'll be back live tomorrow. Encore's on FPRNradio.com, 12 a.m. Central, 1 a.m. Eastern, TruthBroadcastNetwork.com. We're out of here.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one. Stay classy.
9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P, Kristan H, The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.